Hi, everybody. Dennis and Julie. Dennis Prager and Julie Hartman. What number is this, by the way? Do you know?
I was wondering. I think it's 88.
The speed of time. We were just commenting on that right before. 88 is correct. The irony is the wrong word. The interesting aspect of today is that we could speak for 4 hours. We would need perhaps a bathroom break, and then we would do another 4 hours. That is how much is on my mind, and you have a lot of stuff on your mind.
Right.
So I as everyone knows, this Dennis and Julie podcast is not news driven. We may make reference to something happening, but it's a free-for-all thought, life, us.
Extravaganza.
Extravaganza, that's a good term. But I have to say that the events in Israel have been consuming, and I don't let myself get consumed. I'm very even-tempered, as you well know. I've worked on it all of my life. And I remain even-tempered now, but I am watching evil of such magnitude and vast numbers of people who support that evil. That is more depressing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
See, there were no pro-Nazi demonstrations
in the United States,
around the world,
Yeah.
during exactly, or even in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
There were Nazis, but there's a tiny element, and they were regarded by mainstream people as morally defective human beings. But here, an announcement that a nation should be destroyed, and you have this mass support for that idea. There was interesting, there was not a tavern, I'm thinking in British terms, using tavern.
Which, by the way, we should acknowledge that we were both in London.
Yes, and we will get to that, hopefully, yes. But there was a diner or some sort of restaurant in the New York area, I believe it was. And the owner put out pictures of Israeli kids who had been kidnapped. And his entire staff quit. Did you see this story?
I did not, no.
His entire staff quit, and a certain number of his patrons would not return. And word got out, and now he's doing better business than ever because so many people are now frequenting his restaurant. Mm-hmm. But what does that mean? I mean, what was his staff composed of? That putting pictures of kidnapped Israeli kids is morally objectionable, that you quit your job.
Well, we saw that at NYU. I believe it was NYU. Could have been Columbia. But there was a university where students on their windows put up faces of the hostages, and they were torn down. And there was a video that I saw the other day where a member of the U.S. women's national soccer team was driving in Los Angeles past a pro-Israel protest. She rolled down her window and raised her hand in the Heil Hitler.
She was on the team. She's not.
Oh, she's not now.
Yeah, no,
okay.
Right.
I thought she was now. It's really terrifying. To see these people coming out of the woodwork, and they are so unashamed of their anti-Semitism.
It means there's not that much stigma.
Right. Well, Vivek Ramaswamy, the other night in the third presidential debate, which, by the way, shout out to our company, Salem Media Group, for co-moderating that debate. And just to give another aside about Vivek, his opening line did you see this? Where he came after Ronna McDaniel NBC for peddling the Russia collusion hoax. I was watching that, like cheering him on. That was the best line ever in debate history. Putting that aside, he had a really, I thought, great line too about anti-Semitism, where he said that it reflects a greater rot in the society.
That's exactly right.
You say it with the canary in the mine.
Right.
That
They're noxious fumes.
Yes. And so it shows the moral degradation of the United States of America in general, and how amazing, by the way, because we're supposedly so woke and we're so race conscious and we're so, people who are oppressed conscious. And yet the fact that we're seeing this across the board in businesses, universities, individual people who are unashamed to come out with their anti-Semitism, I hope people are finally seeing the light. That this is a morally confused and morally corrupt culture that we're in.
So I wrote an article, I looked it up, I didn't remember, 2015. So that would be 8 years ago.
Oh, is this the Pakistan
No,
one?
that's another one, and that's totally worthy of noting. I wrote a piece, let me see if I could see it right now, and it was titled, it's really, I want people to read it because I would actually like to read excerpts for a moment on this issue. Let's see if I can here. I didn't think I would be reading from it, so I didn't prepare it, and I don't want to waste people's time, but it was an article about, remember when there was a huge influx of Muslims from the Middle East to Europe and the United States. So it was 2015, and I wrote, my heart breaks for a lot of these people. Syrians were being slaughtered en masse, and Iraqis, and ISIS, and Syria. And I wrote, look, they're going to bring into Europe, and it was really about Europe. They're going to bring into Europe, not everyone, obviously, but a lot of them will bring anti-Western values with them. People don't come naked. They wear their values, which is inevitable. If I moved somewhere, I would bring my values with me. And it was so unpopular to say that. So the left attacked you as xenophobic and Islamophobic. The liberals attacked you as not compassionate.
Right.
But I was right. A lot of these demonstrations to destroy Israel, which is what, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's what it means. It means no Israel. Okay, it would be like saying from the Atlantic to the Pacific, the United States will be free. No United States. Something else will be there. And I'm open in general, and I'm doubly open with you, which is part of the appeal of Dennis and Julie. So you do this to you, and I do this to me. I ask myself, how do I feel? I know it's an odd thing. I don't mean how do I feel, obviously physically, but what am I thinking and sensing? So if you're vindicated when you were really unpopular for saying something and you're vindicated, do you feel, vindicated? And the truth is, I wish I were wrong.
Right.
Of course it's vindicated. I mean, this is unprecedented in the United States was so pro-Israel. It was the first country under Harry Truman to recognize Israel. And this country, there was such a pride in Israel. The Jews are returning home, and look at what they're making out of basically a desert and a swamp. Tel Aviv was a swamp. It's now one of the most technologically advanced, culturally advanced cities on earth.
Right. In 75 years.
In 75 years. While fighting all these wars to survive.
I know. And after having just gone through the Holocaust.
Yes. So why all of a sudden this change? Well, there are now 8 million Muslims in the United States. Not every Muslim wants Israel destroyed, but I would say half do.
Go on.
No. America is changing. Europe is changing.
See, I think, well, the influx of Muslims in Europe, I think, is having a far greater impact on the culture than the influx of Muslims to the United States. There are far more. I mean, just geographically, it makes more sense. I was giving a speech at the Santa Monica Women's Republican Club recently, and someone, this was actually a few months ago. Do you ever do that where you go recently and then you realize it actually wasn't recently at all? It was a couple of months ago. It was before this Israel thing. And someone raised her hand, and it wasn't really a question. It was just more of a comment in the Q&A where she said, I think that Islam is having a lot to do with the moral confusion in the United States. And I said to her, respectfully, ma'am, I disagree with you. I would love to think that there was like an outside virus of thought. And I'm not saying all of Islam is bad. You know, you have to go through 80 million, trillion, bazillion disclaimers and qualifiers. And let's take me in good faith with what I'm about to say, okay? I wish there were an outside religion or ideology that was infecting this. This is homegrown.
That's right.
This is homegrown American, overwhelmingly white liberal cultural rot. And so I'd love to point the finger at other people, and there are contributing factors. I mean, obviously, communism as an ideology has come in and infected the United States. There are parts of radical Islam. I mean, I acknowledge all of that. But this is privileged, overwhelmingly white Americans, as Ben Shapiro would say, kicking themselves in the nuts and kicking their country in the nuts over and over and over.
Ami Horowitz did a video, went to Columbia University, where I'll be speaking, by the way, in a couple of weeks. It'll be very interesting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That will be really interesting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Be safe. You don't. I love you, but sometimes you don't think about that. The safety issue.
Correct.
You need to hire security. I'm going to get on you about that, because seeing these. I mean, the man in L.A. that was knocked down and killed, Paul Kessler. You have to be careful, especially you. Sorry. Go on.
So he attended, there were thousands at Columbia. I can't believe they were all students, but I think they were, because you couldn't get in unless you were press or a student. I asked them that. So they were all students.
Oh.
Vast number, like well over 1,000. And the Holocaust-like chant of "from the river to the sea" and just horrible slogans of destruction and nihilism. And so I asked him, I had no idea what he would say. I said, I'm curious, how many appeared to you to be from the Middle East, and how many appeared to be white Americans?
Can I guess?
Yeah.
50-50.
That's correct.
Really, is it?
Well done. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Which makes your point.
Yes. I would say it's mostly white liberals. Or at least 50% white liberals.
I am literally within 3 months of Israel's birth, I was born. I am as old as Israel. When I was 13, the most popular magazine in America was called Life magazine. You may have heard of it. And I so vividly recall this. So the cover was Israel's bar mitzvah. And I remember thinking, oh, and my bar mitzvah. I'm having a bar mitzvah, Israel's having a bar mitzvah. The sentiment in America was so overwhelmingly, thank God the Jews returned to their land. Thank God that you have a country with these values set up there.
So what happened?
What you're saying, what the left has done. The left has perverted the conscience of a generation. It is destroyed it. If you can't see the difference between Israel and their enemies, whoever those enemies might be, Palestinians, Syrians, Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, if you can't see it, your conscience has been nullified. It's frozen.
America is at a tipping point. Hi, Julie Hartman here to tell you about a new movie, Dinesh D'Souza's Police State. It exposes the government's persecution of the conservative MAGA movement. The America that we know and love is becoming more and more like a police state every day. The FBI has turned its eyes away from the real dangers in the world to target what they call domestic terrorists, treating conservative religious Americans like they're criminals. They're targeting their political opponents, using mass surveillance and censorship, indoctrinating children, and threatening families with military-style raids on their homes. This is threatening people like you and me, who speak our minds and stand up for freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Directed by Dinesh D'Souza, Debbie D'Souza, and Bruce Schooley, Police State sounds the alarm. How did we get here? And how do we turn the tide of this tyrannical government's agenda? Please see Police State. Buy it or stream it now at policestatefilm.net. That's policestatefilm.net.
If you can't see it, your conscience has been nullified. It's frozen.
No, it is so true. We are not. I did a show on Timeless recently where I argued that the biggest divide in the United States isn't between Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative. It is those who affirm civilizational and anti-civilizational values. I should switch it because I was saying Democrat first, Republican second, liberal first, conservative second. So I should have said anti-civilizational to make it consistent versus civilizational, but you take my point. You know, when people talk to me in my own life, you know, my parents' friends or people who I went to school with, and they ask me why I'm conservative, I used to have this answer about, and it's true, wanting to conserve the principles of the American founding and wanting small government. I kind of used to give that spiel. But now, especially in the wake of October 7th, my response is, as proud as I am to say that I'm a conservative, a lot of my beliefs are not really conservative. They're just defending reality and defending what is objectively good.
Right, but that has turned out to be conservative.
I agree with you. It has turned out to be conservative.
It should be liberal as well.
It should be, exactly. But I just want to point out to you, and we see this recently with, you know, in Ohio, they just codified abortion into the Constitution. The country is so left-wing, and they have this idea of Republicans as these bigots or these, you know, like antiquated people from the past. I actually think most of the platform of the Republican Party, most Republicans I know, again, it's not particularly conservative. And I'm saying that to repeat, I'm very proud to be conservative. But saying that there are only two genders, saying that we need border control, saying that we need police, saying that Israel was terrorized by terrorists, that's not conservative. To your point, that's not liberal. That's just reality. That is just objective goodness. And I wish to God more people saw that. But what I will say is that I think we're starting to see the mask come off. And I'm not so convinced that there's going to be a turn in how people vote. I don't know, but I think now it will be a lot harder for people to defend wokeism, because for the wokeism, started about 10 years ago. Obviously, the seeds were planted before that, but really this whole like gender, police, race craze that really gained momentum about 10 years ago. And it was in vogue for a while to, you know, argue these things, but I think now there are just so many bad things that have happened, the Black Lives Matter riots being one of them, and this Israel thing being another, where the mask is off. You can no longer claim that you care about oppressed people and you stand with those who are the victims of violence if you support Hamas. Do you see what I'm saying? Where it's just...
Well, your point, the mask has come off.
It's off.
So this has been I'm following this, obviously, avidly. And the New York Times, the Washington Post, and LA Times had front page articles that Jewish progressives feel profoundly lonely now because all of these progressives have come out to be haters, people who favor the destruction of the only state in the world that they favor the destruction of is a Jewish state the size of New Jersey. In other words, they're learning that at least on this, the left is scum, which I've said all of my life.
I have no sympathy for Jewish progressives. I'm sorry. I don't have any sympathy for them.
That was my article. People should read my column. It's up at DennisPrager.com and at American Greatness and Town Hall and the Jewish Press and the Daily Wire. I mean, happily, my column gets around. And I was never so happy as this particular column. Jews are just shocked that the progressive world is okay with Israel's destruction. Mm-hmm. So as I said, so wait a minute. So all these years that they said that America's systemically racist, that was okay.
That's exactly what I argued timeless 2 weeks ago. I did a show on this called The Pro-Israel Left. I have no sympathy for them. I'm sorry. I'm sad for that. I'm sad that this is happening. I have sympathy for Jews in general.
It's okay
Jewish
to give kids a gender-affirming care when they're 11.
I said on my show 2 weeks ago, I said, every single time that you acquiesced to an absurd demand by a college student, every time that you gave a mealy-mouthed excuse for a woke temper tantrum, you laid a brick. Oh, and I added, and every time you allowed a lie to be spread about America, moral confusion to be spread about race, gender, immigration, etc., you laid a brick in the now massive edifice of extremism and entitlement that you are so lamenting. You did this, progressive Jews and non-Jews, but frankly, I'm sorry, a lot of progressive Jews.
Well, all the progressives.
I have very little sympathy right now for progressive Jews.
No, I'm totally on board with you. I got a call from a listener just today on the show. A longtime listener. She lives in Idaho. She's vacationing in Costa Rica in Central America. So she said, our waitress was very beautiful, and we started to talk, and I detected a slight accent, and I said, "Where are you from?" And she was hesitant, very hesitant.
To say that she's Jewish?
From Israel.
Oh, from Israel, yeah. Well...
What other group on earth is now hesitant to say where they're from?
I'll give you an example. I was on the Tube in London. I could give you two stories about the Tube that are relevant to this, but one of them... So Dennis and I recently went to London where we were at the ARC conference, which is a conference that was founded and planned by Jordan Peterson and Baroness Philippa Stroud and all these great people. And anyway, I'm just saying that to give context for why I was on the Tube in London recently, going from the conference to a dinner. And it was rush hour and the Tube was packed. And I was walking with someone from the conference to the Tube station. We got on the Tube, and he is, I'm going to butcher this, but he's head of some European coalition for Israel. And we were on the Tube, and we were talking about it, and he asked me, "Are you Jewish?" And we were like packed in there like sardines. And when he asked me this, all of these heads turned.
Really?
All of these heads turned, yes. And I felt, even though I'm not Jewish, I had this moment where I went, I would be so afraid to say yes right now if I were. I said to him, and I said, we should not be talking about your work with Israel on this Tube. It's just not worth it. Not now. But all these heads turned.
Was it people who looked like they were from the Middle East?
No, it was a hodgepodge. There were some black people, white people. There were some people who looked like they were from the Middle East, but mostly it was white people, but I think they were turning to...
Is he Jewish?
He is Jewish, yes. Yeah. And there was I hesitate to tell this story, but when you hesitate on D&J, you go ahead and do it. Consequences be damned. But I told you and Sue this. The next day I was on the Tube, and there was a Muslim man who got on, and he had a briefcase, and he put the briefcase down 2 seats from where he was sitting, and he was playing Islamic music on his phone. And it was weird. He was sitting and he put up the number 1 on his knee. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it's like a prayer signal. I don't know. But every 5 seconds he was going, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. And I was terrified. And I was getting off at the next station. That was my station to get off. But even if that wasn't my station, I was going to get off. And I know people hearing this, I'm sure I'm going to be called an Islamophobe. And I'm sure that, they're going to be like, oh, I have so much empathy for the white girl who was afraid on the tube. But we're in a different world now. We're in a really scary world. And that was the day after there were 100,000 people in London protesting pro-Palestine. There were swastika. And I was truly afraid. And I'm not afraid to admit that I was afraid. It doesn't mean I'm afraid of all Muslims. My best friend in the entire world is a devout Muslim man. But when a guy gets on the tube and he's saying Allahu Akbar in this world that we're living in, it really shook me. And it was interesting because everyone else on the tube...
Well, and they don't blame their fellow Muslims, the people who shout Allahu Akbar as they torture people.
Yes. And there were other people on the tube who were looking and they were scared.
Of course. And you would think... Can you imagine? This is to show you what the left has done to the conscience. This is truly one of the almost infinite number of examples. Imagine if Christians engaged in the atrocities that Muslims engage in. Imagine beheading non-Christians and screaming, Christ is king, while doing it.
I did have this kind of, I guess maybe the woke people have gotten to me. I did have this kind of like, am I racist? Like thought process as this guy was sitting and whispering Allahu Akbar with the briefcase. And I'm like, am I just, do I suck? Like, is there something wrong with me? But no, this is the world that we're in now. And it is really scary. And I think by not acknowledging the radical parts of Islam and that there are many people, not all Muslims by any means, but many people who are out to do harm, by not acknowledging that, we're allowing it to happen. And we're standing silent in the face of it. And I'm not afraid to acknowledge it. I'm scared. I'm very scared. I'm scared that something's going to happen. I'm afraid that there's going to be a terrorist attack Hamas has said that remember there was that like global day of jihad that was supposed to happen on Friday, October 13th, and Hezbollah leaders and Hamas leaders have had these like cryptic statements about that we're just getting started. And so, yes, when I was on the tube and there was a Muslim guy who was whispering Allahu Akbar with a briefcase, given that and given the anti-Jew hatred and given the guy that was just killed on the street the other day, I was afraid.
I really want to go to Israel.
How do you, just sorry to interrupt you, how do you react to my being afraid on the tube?
It's a rational response. Does the fear become depressive and paralyzing that you shouldn't allow it to? But is it a rational thing? Of course it is. We've had an open border since Joe Biden was elected president, and even before that to a certain extent, but certainly fully so. Mm-hmm. Are there no people from the Middle East coming in?
I'll give you another example, and this was part of my fear on the tube. There was that ISIS attack in Brussels. Remember that about 2 weeks ago that killed 2 people? Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. So many people are fearful of acknowledging their fear. And what I hope to do in telling you this tube story is to say, as you say...
No, if you have
it's
fear,
rational to
then
have
you
fear.
Are called Islamophobic.
I know.
There's no reason at all that anybody would fear any Muslim.
But you know what was fascinating?
You might as well fear Jews and Christians and Mormons.
Right.
The terror coming from the Mormon community is just overwhelming.
Right. And you know what was fascinating? Because I looked and everyone else on the tube looked afraid.
Yeah, of course, but you can't admit it.
I know, and that was the moment.
But that's the left's doing.
I know, and so that's why I'm admitting it.
The collusion of the left and the fundamentalist Islamist is soul crushing, is civilization crushing. You know, Bill Maher, I got to say, I think he did this because I know I didn't come up with this idea, but I've been citing it regularly. It's brilliant. And I always try to, as you know, give credit to any source. And if it's Bill Maher, it's Bill Maher. Israel is accused constantly of being an outpost of Western civilization in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And everybody assumes, yeah, well, that's a real problem. And he made the point, and I'm not quoting him directly, but he made the point, wouldn't we want Western outposts everywhere?
Right.
Isn't Western civilization better?
Well,
really? I mean, nobody thinks that. That was a
No,
brilliant point.
I know. I mean, this was the point of the ARC conference that we were at, which is to say we should be proud to be members of Western civilization. And frankly, there are a lot of ways in which Western civilizational values are superior to other civilizational values. I mean, even just that one sentence is like seen as, you know, what's the white supremacist and
but it has nothing to do with white.
It has nothing to do with white.
Stalin was white. He hated the West.
And the whole
Hitler was white. He hated the West.
And that's the whole point about Western civilization. The whole point is that the values transcend race or religion. They're universal values which have allowed Western civilization to be the most diverse civilization. I want to tell you about a book that Dennis says has been one of the most influential books of his life, and it has been re-released, George Gilder's Men and Marriage. I interviewed George Gilder on my show. He's been clear about the stakes for the family since 1974. 50 years later, the need of the hour remains. Men that take responsibility for themselves, men that love their wives, men that raise their own children, men who tackle the workforce, motivated by their family and the needs of others. Without fathers, our civilization will sink back into the Stone Age. We must bring dads back or else. Get your copy of George Gilder's classic book, Men in Marriage, today at dadsareback.com. If Dennis recommends it, it's got to be a great read. Civilization needs strong men. Without them, we're toast. Get George's book at dadsareback.com. And that's the whole point about Western civilization. The whole point is that the values transcend race or religion. They're universal values which have allowed Western civilization to be the most diverse civilization.
Korea is Western, Syria is not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. It's a very good example.
Yeah, it certainly is. South Korea.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Just to be precise.
Well, Kamala Harris recently said the United States stands with North Korea. She meant South Korea. Oi!
Oh, Kamala Harris. It'll be, God forbid there should be a terror attack, but if there is one, it'll be very interesting to see what the left's reaction is.
I know. I think, will it harm President Biden? Will it harm the Democrats?
Oh,
no,
I don't even.
I wasn't.
I didn't mean it that way. No, in other words, will they say, "Oh, don't blame Muslims"? If it was clear it was Muslims who did it, okay? Mm-hmm. Will they go into their immediate defense? Well, look, given what Israel is doing in Gaza, there's bound to be an eruption because America supports Israel.
Right.
Will the left say that?
Yes, they will. My question was, will there be any blowback on the Democratic Party because of their stances on immigration and because of the moral confusion, the anti-Israel sentiment that they've been allowed to spread? But no, I don't think there will be.
It would appear that there is almost no position the Democratic Party could take leftward that would have them lose a substantial number of votes. They're protected by a whole host of things, including, as the recent off-year elections showed, abortion.
Yes. Oh, gosh. Could this be many Dennis and Julies? the issue of abortion. Go on, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
No, go give me your thoughts.
This is coming. I've said this a million times on this show. I get very conflicted about the issue of abortion. I'm not a pro-absolutist, and I'm not a pro-choice absolutist. You mean pro-life? You didn't say pro-life. You said I'm not a pro-absolutist, and I'm not a pro-choice. I'm not a pro-life absolutist, and I'm not a pro-choice absolutist. I would say that I lean pro-life. I definitely believe in having restrictions at a very early stage, but I don't know if I would outlaw it entirely. Putting that aside, I just wanted to make it clear that I'm speaking about this subject as someone who's on the fence. It is amazing how much this issue has come to characterize or come to inhabit such a large space in people's minds. I'm not saying that it's not an important issue, but I mean,
it's not the only issue.
Well, also, it's certainly not the only issue. And if I had to rank the issues that we are facing in this country, the top 10, abortion would not be in the top 10.
Oh, I would put it in the top 10, but it isn't number
Would you?
one. Yeah.
Why?
Because it says something about a civilization that its elite consider the human fetus to be worthless.
I see. Okay. All right, that's fair.
Yeah.
I understand. But you would rank it as... You would rank it as an issue because
of what it says about the society.
Yes, because of what it says about the society. But if we just take that away, the issue of women having the right to abort a child, to me, doesn't rank that high on the list of issues right now. It doesn't.
Okay, right. You lean pro-life.
Yes.
Well, it is not possible to be rational. Forget God, forget religion. It is not possible to be rational and not lean pro-life.
Right.
You are going to tell me that the human fetus is a pimple? That is the position of the entire left, of most liberals. I debated a guy many, many years ago, a liberal guy, and I pushed and pushed, and finally he said, "You're right, I admit it. The human fetus is a pimple." And that ended it.
You know what? At least he admitted it.
Yes.
At least he came out and said what he thinks. But again, I'm not saying that it's not an issue.
I understand.
But my gosh, I mean, people will vote. There are these polls.
It's actually more important to the left even than to the right. Nobody listening who is pro-life is going to dismiss you because you don't think it's in the top 10 issues.
Yes. I have said on your show, on Dennis and Julie, and guest hosting your radio show so many times that I'm conflicted about the issue of abortion. Hell, when I started out with you, I said I'm pro-choice on the air. That's back when, I was sort of less evolved on this issue. I never got so much as an email of someone harassing me about it. Shows you the amount of nuance that is allowed on the right as opposed to the left. But putting that aside for a moment, it's amazing the point I'm trying to make is that we have voters who will vote Democrat solely because of the issue of abortion. I know such people. Point.
There is nothing the Democrats could do because they're protected by abortion.
Yes. And I know people who I went to college with who say, Julie, I agree with you. The Democratic Party's gotten too insane about crime. The immigration thing is a real issue. The woke stuff is a real issue. But it is medieval. That's what they say to me. It is medieval to deny a woman the right to have an abortion. And I will always vote Democrat because of that. That is what I'm trying to say with we had to rank the top 10 issues. You're voting for the Democrats because of abortion.
It would be very interesting. Forgive me. Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
It would be very interesting for me to ask, and I will. I'll do it in print in Jewish media. So I would like to ask Jewish Democrats. Mm-hmm. Let's say the Democratic Party continues its evolution to alienation from Israel, mm-hmm. even anti-Israel. Mm-hmm. So would you more readily vote for a pro-life, pro-Israel Republican or a pro-choice, anti-Israel Democrat?
That's one of your classic
Ors.
Either or.
Yeah. What do you think the answer would be?
Oh, gosh, it's very interesting. I think now, after October 7th, I think more people would vote for the pro-life, pro-Israel candidate. But I think there would be a large contingent of progressive Jews who would probably vote for the pro-choice.
Well, the fact
Anti-Israel
is,
one.
even if it took a moment thought,
I know.
it would show you how the stranglehold the abortion issue has on people on the left.
But again, to hammer this point home, to the people who say that I will always vote Democrat, no matter how rancid the Democratic Party gets otherwise because of the issue of abortion, that is what I mean with abortion is not a top 10 issue, okay? These are the uncomfortable facts to acknowledge about abortion. Of course, if a woman is raped, or in the case of, incestual, predatory family members who impregnate a woman, of course it is not their choice to get pregnant, okay? I think they should have a right to have an abortion. They're in a different category. And everyone brings up the people in those categories like they characterize the whole thing, okay? I acknowledge there's that category, but it's a teensy tiny cohort of people, to use our favorite word. Here's the uncomfortable fact. You have a lot of choices. Talk about pro-choice that you make up until the point of having sex and getting pregnant.
Bravo to you. Very few people point that out.
No, but it's like, come on.
Right.
Be an adult. You don't have to have sex. There's a lot also to acknowledge really uncomfortable things. If you're feeling the urge to be intimate with a partner, there are a hell of a lot of things that you can do to scratch that itch besides penetration.
That's correct.
Again, sorry, you have a choice whether to use contraception, to be on birth control. You even have a choice if you again, to really get into details, let's say your condom breaks and you go, oh gosh, maybe, there's a chance I might be pregnant. You can take Plan B. There's a morning after pill. I mean, there's a lot of things up until that point that you can do, preventative measures that you can take to ensure that you don't get pregnant. But we don't acknowledge that. We just think like, oh, people should be able to have reckless, superfluous sex with no consequences. No, you have responsibility and you have consequences. And so when people talk about this abortion debate, I wish they would acknowledge that. And for that reason, it is not the most pressing issue in the United States. People talk about like getting pregnant as if like it just like it's like catching a cold, or it's like getting hit by a car. You just can't help it. If you're raped, again, that's a different story. But getting pregnant is not just like an accidental thing that, just happens to you most of the time. You have choices.
So, and let me comment on the rape thing, on the rape issue. I happen to agree that the pro-life people need to compromise on that. Or
on the rape thing?
Or we won't win the country.
Right.
Okay? And if you want to be pure, you lose. In the real world, to do good means getting your hands dirty. It's like if you're a pacifist, you live in this purity world. Oh, it's wrong to kill. Well, it's not always wrong to kill. And there are compromises made on the ideal of never killing in order to do what is justified. Mm-hmm. The best is the enemy of the better. And we are going to lose. How's this? If you want more 11-year-olds to get hormone blockers, if you want more girls to get mastectomies, then vote Democrat. That's the party for mastectomies on women and girls who don't need it for medical reasons. And so there's such a litany of evil and bad and awful things that come with the left.
Yes.
That you will give up just to be pure on abortion.
It's a great point, and as you write in your Torah commentary, and as we've discussed before, look at who we had to partner with in World War II to defeat the Nazis, the Soviet Union. Life is about making concessions, about to facilitate the best possible outcome. And so I agree with you that, and by the way, I have a lot of respect as someone who may not necessarily agree, but I have a lot of respect for pro-lifers who say that a child of rape is just as precious.
It's true.
It is true.
It's a fact.
It's objectively true. And so I have a lot of respect for that position, but I agree with you that we have to compromise. But I am sick to death of this narrative that every single person who gets pregnant and every single woman who's seeking an abortion just accidentally out of nowhere nowhere got pregnant and they're in this situation. It's like, okay, no, we have to stop that narrative. In some cases, it is true. I acknowledge that. But in most cases, you made a lot of decisions that resulted in this consequence, and you bear responsibility for your decisions. And so again, the fact that we're now in this place where people are so one-sided about abortion, one-sided, not one-sided. It sounded like I said sided. One-sided about abortion, and they will only vote on that issue amidst the debt, immigration, the crime, Israel, our national security in general, hormone blockers, the state of American public schools. Those are really morally confused people. Even if they're right about abortion, let's say they're totally right and the Republican Party is wrong. Still, if that is the one issue the Democrats are right about, that is not enough of a reason to vote for the Democrats.
You said earlier that something to the effect, I don't know if I'm conservative. I mean, you do know, but...
I do definitely know.
Yes, but your point is well taken. It's just logic. It's just reason. So I don't know. You tell me if I've told this story on Dennis and Julie. I know I've told it, but not often. So I even remember the airport, which is amazing because I live at airports.
Common sense. You've told it.
Yes. All right. So in a nutshell, I meet this guy, young man, about 35 years old. Oh, I love your work. So when he has a slight accent, I go, where are you from? He goes, Norway. I go, Norway? Are there conservatives in Norway? And he goes, I don't know if I'm conservative. I just follow what's logical.
Yep.
And that's right. That if you follow what's logical, if you follow reason, that's the irony. Reason doesn't suggest that the human fetus is not human. It's a perfect example. While it's true that the vast majority of people who are pro-life are religious, it is one of the handful of instances where I believe pure reason without God argues for that being human.
Yes.
It's only human when it is, depending on its geography. Isn't that bizarre?
Yes. Oh, I'll give you a great example again from Vivek Ramaswamy, and he was citing Clarence Thomas, who was citing a case apparently where there was a pregnant woman walking down the street who was assaulted. She survived, the baby didn't. And Vivek said at the debate, again, citing Clarence Thomas, would any American think that that perpetrator doesn't deserve to be charged with a homicide? No. I think,
I mean, the inconsistency is mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing.
The pro-choice movement is overwhelmingly narcissism.
Oh my God, I said this on Timeless too. I said it's the cult of self.
Yes.
All of these issues are the cult of self.
Yes.
The pronoun issue.
Good.
Yes. So many of these, it's me. You have to call me by my pronouns. I have the right to, have an abortion even if I participated in extramarital sex. Just a litany of issues.
Non-marital, you mean?
No, did I say?
You said extra.
Extramarital?
That's adultery.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay. There are many reasons to buy gold and silver. Bank failures, digital currency volatility, emerging market countries trying to topple the dollar as a global reserve currency. This is Julie Hartman for AmFed Coin and Bullion, Dennis's choice for buying precious metals. If you ask AmFed owner Nick Grovich to simplify the case for precious metals, he'll tell you that when President Roosevelt recalled the gold in circulation and paid people with paper money, they received a $20 bill for a $20 gold piece. Today, that $20 bill won't even fill half of your gas tank, but the gold piece is worth about $2,000. Which would you rather own? Now let's simplify the reasons to use AmFed Coin and Bullion. Nick's been in the industry for over 42 years, and he's proud of providing transparency and fair pricing to build trusted relationships. If you're interested in buying or selling, call Nick and his team at AmFed Coin and Bullion. 1-800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. I thought extramarital just means outside of marriage.
No. Extramarital means you're married and you have it outside of your marriage.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But yes, there's a narcissism of
right.
everyone.
Don't bug me.
Triggers are a narcissism.
Totally.
I have the right not to be offended. I mean,
Yes.
yeah. Student loan forgiveness, another example I gave. I don't have responsibility to pay my loans.
I want to make a list of
yes.
Since I was your age, I knew leftism was a euphemism for narcissism. I saw it because I saw it in the left-wing students at Columbia. They were so self-centered.
So self-righteous, too. Yes.
And self-righteous. I grew up in a religious world where the whole thing was, are you Dennis Good? Are you doing what is right? Are you fulfilling your obligations? It was do you know, I point out to people, I know biblical Hebrew rather well, as you know. Mm-hmm. There is no biblical Hebrew word for rights.
Really?
Only obligations.
Mm. Yes, people talk about and by the way, I think that people should have health care. I'm pro health care, but people talk about a right to health care. We don't have a right to health care.
Well,
constitutionally, we don't have
endless.
a right
well,
to
well, not only constitutionally, where does it end?
Yes.
If the government should pay for my health care, why should it pay for my food?
Yes. And these are complicated subjects, but people talk about rights like I have the right to have a Hershey bar every morning. No, there are some things that you don't have a right to. It would be great if you get it. You may deserve to get it, but that's different than from having a right to it. Like someone was giving a speech in North Dakota. She was like the first lesbian, like attorney general or something. Maybe not attorney general, but some politician in North Carolina. And she was giving a speech on Pride Day. And she said, every American has the right to feel seen and represented in their, own country. Every American has the right to be...
A right. What does it even mean?
Seen and represented.
So what does that mean? If my politician looks like me, is that argument?
Yes. And she said to feel comfortable.
This is a good example of the intellectual shallowness of the left. I can't think of a more shallow argument than your elected officials should look like you.
I know. It doesn't.
Why do I give a damn?
Yes.
All I want is my elected officials
to do right by me.
Yes.
To do well by me.
Or even think like me.
Right.
I admit that. Look like me.
I know. But there was something...
But they don't even mean it. Forgive me. No. They don't even mean it. Because if this is a white liberal talking, or a white liberal, or white leftist, do they want to look like a white conservative? No, it's a good point. It's palpably a lie. Does a black leftist feel represented by Clarence Thomas? They look like Clarence Thomas, but they're completely alienated. So this notion, it's just a gigantic nonsense. It's a nothing burger, if you will.
Well, what you are highlighting, and frankly what we've been highlighting this whole episode, is that the left is fundamentally inconsistent because leftism is not based on principles. Now, it's possible to have certain principles and then have some of your viewpoints or policy outcomes to come out a bit contradictory or inconsistently. I acknowledge that. But the left doesn't have principles, and that means that every single one of their diktats is inconsistent. For instance, this whole idea of representation, you just exposed it. I mean, they talk about the importance of representation, but then when they do have someone like Clarence Thomas or Tim Scott, a black conservative, a minority conservative, they throw that doesn't count as
Then they don't want to look like their leader.
Then the whole importance of representation fades. I could give a million examples. How about the whole people on the left support, protect, defend women, but they also say that there's no such thing as a woman.
And certainly not women's sports.
Right. Well, they say that they are anti-white supremacy, they're anti-Nazi, but then they're pro-Hamas. How does that make sense? They say America is systemically racist, but that non-white immigrant should come here.
Let me ask a Julie question.
Yeah.
A question of Julie, but about Julie. It's a very sincere one. So when you come to these conclusions and ask these questions, which are so right on intellectually and morally, is there a voice in you thinking, boy, I wouldn't have asked this stuff 4 years ago?
On this subject of abortion, I used to answer your question first. I don't know if I would have considered these things 4 years ago. The one that haunts me is abortion, because I was so pro-choice for a lot of my life. And I really thought that it was just awful to deny a woman to have an abortion.
I started out pro-choice.
I know, but I think a lot of people do. But what worries me is that when I was younger, it didn't even occur to me the arguments about the preciousness of the fetus's life.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's agree. What haunts, because I think back to my old self and the questions.
And those who made it were considered kooks.
Yes. And that's what that I have to say that haunts me about me, because I know that I'm a good person, and I know that I know think
you're
that
a good person
thank
too,
you.
by the way.
Thank you. Maybe after this episode, some people won't think so. I said progressive Jews I'm upset at. I was afraid of a Muslim guy on the tube. The abortion thing isn't a big issue. I'm definitely going to get some flack for this episode. But anyway, thank you for saying I'm a good person. But I look back and I go, how did it not occur to me?
It's so I feel the exact same.
That it's so morally horrible that I just had this like one-sided view of a woman has a right to abort. Anyone who's denying her that hates women and is a medieval bigot. I never considered the preciousness of the life and
right. That's exactly right.
But that's really bad.
Yeah. It's very hard, and the lockdowns and COVID made it clearer than ever, at least within an American context. It's very hard not to think like a sheep.
Oh, I'll give you another example of something that haunts me about my old self and the way that I used to think. I used to, remember in 2016 when Trump was running and he was talking about the border wall and the left went nuts over a border wall?
Right.
I was one of those people who thought that it was horrible to build a border wall.
Oh, well, all right. I'm happy I asked my
question.
No,
I remember thinking.
So this is not the same Julie.
No, it's not. But again, to use the same word, it haunts me about my old self, because I know not to make.
What did I miss?
What did I miss? And I know that I was one of the better ones. I know that I was more rational and more morally attuned than a lot of other people. And I'm not saying that to sound supercilious. It's just true. And so I went, even the fact that I was, again, more rational, more morally kind of aware than others, I still fell for this stuff. I mean, I remember thinking, it is so horrible to deny these immigrants coming here. It is so horrible to build a wall. Who would do that? Why would you deny these people fleeing persecution the right to come into this country? It didn't even occur to me. Okay, you know what, Julie? Doesn't mean that you shouldn't have sympathy for those individuals, but you can't run a country if you don't have borders. That didn't occur to my peewee head, my peewee brain. Wow.
That's why you didn't enter academia.
Well, yeah, that's true. I entered it in the sense I went to college, but not as a profession. But that's really a bad sign that the conservative arguments don't even occur to people. The first time it occurred to me was watching PragerU videos. I went, oh, you're right. You do need a border to have a country. Like, oh my God. What?
You said you're well on your way to white supremacy.
I know. I know. But it shows what a failing of American education and just the contamination of thought that something so obvious wouldn't even occur to me.
Gaza proves the need for a good wall.
Oh, well, it's so funny because I remember what a big deal it was in 2016 that Trump dared to say that he would build a border wall, but now Biden's doing it and everyone's fine.
Of course.
Everyone's fine with it. And President Obama, when he was a senator, Chuck Schumer, when he was a senator, and, well, he's still a senator, but and Hillary Clinton, when she was a senator, all voted for a border wall in 2006.
Talking about Schumer, I don't know the answer to my own question, but I know I have to read up on Amy Schumer. Are you familiar with what's going on?
No.
Oh, there's a lot of controversy. I this is purely conjecture, but something to the effect, I think she's come out for Israel and has annoyed vast numbers of her friends. But I may have the story completely wrong. Maybe it's the opposite. But I think that's the way this notion of I've lost my friends, the ease with which you can lose a left-wing friend, you just have to take one position and they're gone. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're for Israel? I'm out of your life. Oh, you're for a border wall? You're out of my life. Oh, you don't think kids should be given hormone blockers? You're out of my life.
And it's only on one side. It's only on one side.
That's correct.
So my dear friend who texted you recently, you know her, I won't say her name, but she's one of my best friends from high school, and she has been telling me that she's been posting on social media in support of Israel. She's Jewish, and there are all of these girls from my high school who have written messages, like really mean messages to her, or unfollowed and blocked her on Instagram for posting pro-Israel stuff. I'm so used to it because all these people from my high school hate me. But I've been used to that for a while. But my friend, she's like the sweetest, most non-political person, and she was posting pro-Israel stuff, and done. People at my high school just washed their hands of her. This wokeism, this rancid cultural moral confusion, I think is really pathological. I honestly think there is mental illness doused in there. If someone is so brainwashed as to think that saying there are only two genders is bigoted, if someone is so brainwashed as to cancel a friend that they've had for their entire life because that friend supports a border wall, that isn't just like radical left wing. I honest to God think that is like a pathology. That is sick. A mental illness.
I rarely use sick as a substitute for evil, because
right. Oh.
No. I'm about to agree with you.
No, but that's a really interesting point.
I've made it for.
That's a very good point.
Well, what?
We excuse evil by saying they're sick.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Sick was not used until the 60s.
Right.
It was not a euphemism for evil. Evil was evil. Whether you were sick or not, it was evil. Mm. But ironically, while that is a really important point, agreed. Mm-hmm. I'm making almost the opposite point. I do believe that there is sickness at the heart of leftism. It is not just evil that you can't see what's wrong with a man who says he's a woman competing in women's sports. If you can't see that, it transcends the collapse of your conscience. It is the collapse of your mental faculties.
Yes.
It is as self-evident as I can't ride a horse while in a track meet against runners.
Yes. No, it really is. It is. I'll give this example, and I think Candace Owens said it. There are mentally ill people who think that they are, the example she gave was the chief of an Indian tribe. Or like who think they are Jesus or think they are Gandhi. Do you support them in thinking that they're Gandhi or Jesus? Do you affirm the fact like, yes, you are Jesus when they're clearly not Jesus? What Candace says is when you are abiding by other people's pronouns when they are clearly not that gender, you are in effect supporting their mental illness. And that is not compassionate. What you need to be doing...
You can't even say it's mental illness, even though it's in the DSM-4.
Yes, DSM-4 and DSM-5 as gender dysphoria.
They're up to 5, yeah.
Yes, they're up to 5, yes.
So if you think you're the opposite sex, you're normal.
You want a killer Black Friday deal? How about a free Moto G 5G phone from Pure Talk? No gimmicks, no trade-in necessary. Just sign up for Pure Talk's unlimited talk, unlimited text, and 15 gig data plan for just $35 and get the Moto G 5G phone for free. But you need to move fast because these phones will be gone by the end of the month. So if your current phone is on life support, upgrade for free with Pure Talk. Enjoy 2-day battery life, a quad pixel camera, and a whole lot more. Just dial pound 250 and say the keyword Dennis Prager to speak with Pure Talk's U.S. customer service team. They make switching so easy and will make sure you get your new phone. Remember, Pure Talk gives you America's most dependable 5G network at half the price. Dial pound 250 and say keyword Dennis Prager to claim your free Moto G 5G phone with qualifying plan from Pure Talk.
So if you think you're the opposite sex, you're normal. I mean, by the way, it's not an insult. If I say somebody has bipolar disorder, am I insulting them?
No,
my heart goes out to them.
It's actually, it is. I think it's being compassionate to say these people are clearly really mentally suffering. And the point that Candace is making, which is bold, and I take it, is that you think you're being compassionate by abiding by pronouns. And by the way, I'm speaking as someone who does abide by pronouns usually. I get conflicted about it nowadays, but in college when someone, was asking me to use pronouns that were different from what they looked like, I wasn't going to be
You actually had that?
Dennis, of
course.
No,
I'm not being cute.
All the time. Oh, yeah.
So someone would look like a man?
Yeah.
And say use she when you refer to me?
Well, they would look like a man, but then, they would dress like a woman and grow out their hair. And
see, my answer, in 98% of cases, maybe 99,
mm-hmm.
we assume someone is a man or a woman.
Right.
We have every right to assume that.
Right.
In 1% of the cases, there are times when I would say to my wife, we're at a restaurant, I must admit, I don't know if it's a he or she, the waiter.
Right.
Okay, fine, that happens. So where I can't tell,
mm-hmm.
and there's a badge and it says Maria, then I'll say she.
Mm-hmm.
If it started out as Marvin,
right.
It's none of my business.
Right.
I have no issue. But if you have a beard and you wear a dress, I am not calling you she.
Mm. See, and Candace's point is you are affirming their mental illness instead of you think you're being compassionate, but it's actually really sad what you're doing. You're making them go in deeper to their mental illness. And look, obviously it wouldn't be your place to pull someone aside and go, hey, I think you're mentally ill. Obviously there are lines.
We're not advocating that.
No one is advocating that.
Well, a therapist should say that.
Well, of course a therapist should. But I'm saying, you just in the classroom or something. But anyway, the whole point, we got off on the transgender issue, but the whole point is about there are these pathological components, I think, of leftism.
Right, that sick is as applicable often as evil.
Yes. And these individuals are just not seeing reality. I mean, if they think that conservatives are white supremacists, to your point, that is okay, I'm putting aside the fringe 0.01% of people who say that they're conservative and they're neo-Nazis. Okay, I'm putting those aside. I'm saying someone like you, if they think that you, Dennis Prager, are a white supremacist, as you have been called on the internet ad nauseum, that reflects a confusion about reality that is on par of saying that a circle is a square or that
right.
the sun is the moon. I mean, really that is what it is about. And so I think we need to acknowledge that a lot of this is, I mean, yes, it's evil, but there is a sick pathological component to this. We are affirming people's delusions.
That's a very important point. Why is it a favor?
Well,
why do you think you're doing them a favor?
And also these individuals, I think, really have emotional regulation problems, because I had some high school girls, as you know, my old peers from high school, comment on my Instagram saying that I was evil. They use that word, evil, mentally ill. And what was the other one? They said I was harming minorities or spreading misinformation about minorities. They were so angry at me for like these videos, which I don't think are particularly controversial, but even if they are controversial, if you're 23 years old and you are like exploding on the internet and like convulsing in the presence of a conservative, you have emotional regulation problems. It's not just that you're left wing. It's not just that you're a Democrat and you're, very much in the ideology. You seriously have a pathology for which you may need medication, and you definitely need therapy. That is a sickness. If people are triggered by, a conservative speaker on their campus, they need to go to the hospital. I'm not kidding. They do. They need to go to the hospital. We're taught, and these left-wing students, they've been contaminated by this brainwash. No, you need meds. That is an issue.
That's right.
Am I wrong, Sean?
We don't flip out
I'm
when
not
Joe
wrong.
Biden shows up.
I know it's actually like
I always ask people on the left, how come we don't have the same? I hate Joe Biden as much as you hate Donald Trump. I don't go crazy. I would, in fact, if he entered the room, I would stand up and shake his hand because he's the president of the United States. But I hate his guts. I have utter contempt for him. I think he's an infinitely greater crook and liar than Donald Trump.
Totally.
And I think he's damaged this country, perhaps for generations. Nevertheless, I don't go crazy.
No.
And if he came to my campus, I'm not even sure I would demonstrate.
I'm laughing.
Let alone shout him down.
Yes, because you're mentally healthy. Look, even this is, if there were a Nazi, like an avowed, what was the guy, David Duke, that ran the Ku Klux Klan, if he showed up on my college campus, okay, or if I encountered him on the street, would I feel inside a profound amount of hatred? Would I say to him, "You are scum"? Yes, I would. Like, in other words, would I have an emotional reaction? Absolutely. But I would be able to control my emotions, even in the presence of a Nazi, the epitome of evil scum. And so when you see these college students, and I was laughing a few seconds ago because I was imagining this, there's this video, I'm sure you're aware, maybe you were even there, of Charlie Kirk on some college campus. And he's literally walking by these leftists who are screaming and shaking. Like they're having a panic attack. That I wouldn't even scream and shake in the presence of a Nazi.
Right.
Because I'm emotionally regulated. When we see videos of that, again, I know I've hammered it home a million times, but we are not just looking at leftists. We are looking at people who are seriously mentally ill. If you are in the presence of Charlie Kirk, you are shaking. That's a problem.
I'll tell Charlie you said that. I agree.
Or maybe I'll tell him.
No, it's so clear, because it's not coming from ideology. It's coming from pathology.
Yes.
That I realized this in graduate school. I remember the day that I did, oddly enough, that most views people hold do not emanate from thought through ideals. They emanate from psychology. Mm-hmm. It's sad, but it's true.
And we think of politics in the realm of psychology as different, but no, nowadays people's political positions and the way that they deal with politics is a reflection of their psychological state.
In most cases.
Trump derangement syndrome.
Which I never used in 4 years of his whole presidency, and now I believe it exists.
Yes.
When you abandon reason because of the letters TRUMP, it's a syndrome. I have come to believe that. It doesn't make sense.
So I know a woman, I know many people with Trump derangement syndrome, but I know a woman who's in her 60s, and she calls herself a conservative, but she has the worst Trump derangement syndrome I've ever seen. Like, literally cannot hear TRUMP said. Like, if she even hears the word, she'll be, I can't deal with this, oh my gosh. And I really have studied her and others with Trump derangement syndrome, but especially her, and I've come up with this preliminary hypothesis, which could be totally wrong, but I think the people who most despise Donald Trump are really dissatisfied with things in their own lives. They're angry at specific people who they don't feel comfortable confronting. And so then they project it onto Donald Trump because he's the easiest person to criticize and to get angry at. And so specifically with this woman, she has some children who have caused her and continue to cause her some really bad problems, just unruly adult children. And she, I think she's so angry at her children. I think she is so angry that her kids haven't turned out the way that she thought they would. But she can't go out in society and say, into her friends and, her colleagues at work, I am so angry that my child did this or did that. So she channels it towards Trump. Just wanted to offer that. Maybe that's part of what it is.
That's why I say every happiness hour on my radio show, the happy make the world better, the unhappy make it worse. And that's a fact. If everybody were happy, you would have no Hamas, you would have no leftists, you would have liberals, you'd have conservatives, you'd have no leftists, you'd have no Nazis. I mean, isn't happy Nazi sort of an oxymoron?
Happy Ku Klux Klan member.
Happy Hamas. I mean, you just imagine This is a joy-filled life, loving their fellow human being. So we don't have a ton of time. So what we'll do is next time, I really want to get your impressions of. We didn't share it with our audience, our impressions of the London conference?
No, this is the first time we're filming since then.
Holy, that's right.
I have been on a plane with Dennis Prager, everyone. First time. Can confirm he is exactly the same person on a plane as he is off a plane. You're working, you're chatting with people, especially the flight attendants, and you're looking out the window at the countries we're flying over.
Only over Greenland.
It was so
when you go
great.
LA, Europe, you go the very northern route over the Arctic, and it's rare you get to see Greenland. You're either flying at night or you're flying over cloud cover. This was daytime and no clouds.
It was magnificent.
It was like seeing a white Grand Canyon.
That's a really good way to put it. It was. Dennis came and got me and said, you have to see this. And I was not skeptical, but I thought, it's going to be nice. But it was gorgeous.
It was awesome.
What?
Sean is a
When was the last time you were in coach?
Yeah.
He's 6'4". Give him a break.
Thank you. Give me a break. I'm 6'4". I don't remember the last time I was in coach. I don't. By the way, I admit,
I remember the last time I was in coach.
Right, last week. But I will, what did I want to say? That I am asked all the time, how do you travel so much, which is almost every week of the year? And I go, if you went first class, you could travel a lot too.
It's a game changer.
Of course it's a game changer.
I have to tell you, I consider myself to be a down-to-earth person. I'm a total snob when it comes to air travel. I think coach is abusive.
Well, it
really
is.
Do.
They have
internationally, especially
narrowed the seats considerably, which is a very. By the way, that's a very interesting issue. You don't know my history with this. I was not against the deregulation of the airlines.
I do know your history. You know why?
Huh.
We talked about it on D&J.
Oh, that ends that. Why is he cracking up, Redbeard?
Because he knows, he remembers too. We had a whole discussion.
Well, that's all right.
About
So that's
planes.
another example.
I think it was last week.
The non-regulated airline is going to make the seat as tight as possible.
Oh, it's horrible.
To maximize the number of people it could sell tickets to.
And we had this discussion on the air, but it's worth repeating that the people on planes are so weird these days.
That's part of the reason, though. All the experiments with packing people into, but the whole thing's a little depressing because, as I told you, look, the America I grew up in is so different. People dressed up to go on airplanes. Today they're in t-shirts and shorts.
So I'll end with this. My favorite book, as you and the audience know, is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and there was this scene where Jane was working with poor children in a school, and they didn't want to they didn't want to learn, they didn't want to participate. And Jane had this line where she said, if you treat someone with dignity, they will start to see themselves as more dignified. And so Jane, unlike the previous teachers, really treated every single one of these children with dignity, and then they started having more motivation to show up and do well and work hard, etc. To relate it to the plane thing, when you don't treat people with dignity, when you pack them in like sardines and the seats have crumbs on them and the food is terrible if you even get it, in the bathroom, then people are going to start behaving in undignified ways. And that's why we see people being sloppy. Because I kind of get it. You're on a plane and you're like, well, it's so bad anyway. I might as well wear, sweatpants and eat my burger with my ketchup dripping down. I bet you if the plane seats were cleaner, if they were more spread out, if you felt more like you were having a luxurious travel experience, you would see a lot more people behaving politely.
Yeah, you don't normally get acting up in first class or business class.
No, because people feel elevated, they feel taken care of, and so in turn they act appropriately.
It's a very valid point.
Just read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. It's filled with those gems. Or watch Dennis and Julie.
Tell them how to reach us.
No, you do.
This is how you reach us. By listening to what Julie is about to say.
Oh my gosh. For the sake of time.
That's right.
I won't keep it going. You can reach me at julie@julie-hartman.com, and I forward many of the notes to Dennis, and we love reading them. Shout out to a listener in, Malaysia, right? Who wrote to us. I mean, shout out to all of you, but it was cool to get one from Malaysia, of all places. You can follow me at Julie R. Hartman on Instagram and Twitter, and you can follow Dennis on Instagram at @TheDennisPrager, and you can catch Dennis and Julie every Monday on this channel at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. Shalom.
Bye.